Right. Um, well, that's good. I actually did think we were going to win it at the end there. That I had that sneaking suspicion that we were going to nick one. Didn't lose. That's good. I'm finding it hard to be constructive about this because I just want to whinge about corruption and like terrible officiating. That's it's one of the worst penalty decisions I've ever seen. Um, it's funny. Like I almost like my frustration that that happened has pretty much completely overshadowed how poor I thought Spurs were for the majority of that game. Like I was getting ready to come on here and complain about just the lack of anything from Tottenham once again, and an incident like that, that penalty going against us, has instantly made me hunker down into almost like a sort of like victim mentality thing, us against the world type stuff. And I just I wonder a tiny bit if it could have the similar effect on the team, on the players. Um, Cristian Romero has gone on and equalised with a bicycle kick, and it's so beautifully fitting that it's Dan Burn standing there like a lemon, like watching the ball just sort of float past him, seemingly, fucking get off me, not quick enough to react to what was unfolding. I mean, who's expecting Cristian Romero to score a bicycle kick at that point, even attempt a bicycle kick? Um, But I was just my head was absolutely on Mars with that penalty decision. I've seen some people on some people on Twitter already saying to me, like Spurs fans as well, be like, "Nah, nonsense, it's penalty all day long. He's holding on to him." But not at all, man. Like you're allowed to there's physical contact that happens inside the box, and we see every single time there is a penalty, every single time there is a corner, every single time there is you know set piece around that area of the pitch. There is going to be some sort of tussling between players. This he's not looking at the ball stuff. I mean, come on, man. Like it's one of those. It's one of those penalties that sure, right. If you want to be like, well, by letter of the law, he's done this and that. Then if we were applying that rule as say, as stringently as we have done here, there would be a penalty every single game of football for that exact offence. It's just it's mad to me that that was given even after a VAR review that they gave that as a penalty. Um, that at very worst for Spurs, that was a 50-50. Burns got the fella in a headlock. He's holding on to him like don't know. Ridiculous, ridiculous. But I'm delighted. I'm delighted. I don't like Dan Burn. Don't like him as a player. Don't know him as a person, obviously. But I just don't like him at all. I don't have a lot of love for Newcastle. Really, many of their players. I was glad to see that we were leaving a few on Joe Linton today. He's one of those players that's kind of made a rod for his own back. He's been such a thug for years that it seems like most other teams kind of revel in playing against him and kind of kick lumps out of him. Um, I feel like somebody else was doing it to him the other day. It might have even been Arsenal. I'm not sure. But either way, I would have liked to. Obviously, I would have liked for us to win that, but I was kind of thinking before this game that we were going to be losing this 4-5 nil. Genuinely. I thought this had like 4-5 nil written all over it. That this could be the end of Frank, all that type of thing. Um, and now obviously we've gotten a draw away at St James's Park, which on paper is a good result. I think we can say on paper that is a good result. In reality, is it? I don't know. Like in reality, was it? I I don't really think so. Um, I think Spurs were abysmal for the majority of this game. They were abysmal. I don't think we registered a shot on target until Cristian Romero's first goal, did we? Which it's just shocking. The from a few weeks, well, even from a couple of weeks ago, saying it feels like there isn't much of a plan there, other than to try and stop the opposition from scoring goals. It doesn't even feel like anything is that coherent anymore. I don't see what we were doing at Fulham that bared any sort of resemblance to what we were doing today. Two fairly poor attempts at winning a football match. Were we even trying to win a football match? It felt like for the majority of the game today, we would just we turned back into that side that we often tend to be, which is waiting for the opposition to score a goal. How many times, when Spurs are in sort of the death throes of a managerial cycle or whatever, we often sit there and just say it looks like we're waiting to concede, um, until we whatever are sparked into life or try and do something for ourselves. It's almost like we feel like the script is they score first and then we try and do whatever we've got to do. I didn't get it. I didn't get anything today. Again, no coherence, no attacking patterns of play, nothing. Um, there was a moment when the clip is doing the rounds, the 50 something minute or so, we got a break, and then we ended up from Spurs being on the break, the ball ended up being back with Vicario again. We literally lacked that spark to want to try and actually attack, try and score a goal on the break. Just meandering around the pitch, knocking it about lackadaisically. Like Bentancur is Bentancur is so unbelievably finished. I'm sorry, but he is so unbelievably finished. I cannot believe we play him as much as we do. I cannot believe Frank relies on him. Frank thinks that he is worthy of a place in this side. I see absolutely nothing there. Fine, he was a good player a few years ago or whatever, but in that time, and and people say, well, he has had a couple of serious injuries. Yeah, and that's that, and that's bad luck for him. But it doesn't mean that we have to keep playing him because he used to be a good player, and the context is he's had injuries since, because those injuries have meant that he isn't that good of a player anymore. It's as simple as that. And I feel like this is kind of the point I was trying to touch on in the last stream. When I was sort of touching on the idea of like, and I singled Porro out, but it can be applied to a number, any number of them. My point was like, we've been saying for ages, Porro's a good player, but he can't really defend. But he's a good player, and he just makes me question like, why do we just kind of? I don't get why we just shrug our shoulders at that stuff. Um, and Bentancur to me is another sort of example of that. Like, well, he was a good player, but he got injuries. So you need to understand why he's not as good as he used to be, because he's had those injuries. Well, no, that makes total sense to me. I get it, but as I say, I know I'm repeating myself here, but the end product is that he's no longer fit for purpose. Um, Yeah, I'm glad we've stopped the rot up there. I'm obviously glad, and I can tell, you can tell, and people can be sort of. Look, I know people say, don't no, you don't ever excuse anyone wanting Tottenham to lose. But you can sort of tell we're at the point already with this Frank Rain where people probably wouldn't say it out loud. I'm not projecting here. I don't feel this way. I'm still, as I've said on here, I'm still sort of on the fence on Frank. I don't really like, gut feeling is it's not really working, but I'm not sat here rabidly saying get him out now. He's got to go. But I do feel like we've kind of entered that place with him where some people are probably hoping that games like tonight, and like I say, that it's the quiet thing that they wouldn't say out loud, but they're probably hoping we get walloped in games like tonight to hurry him up out the door. That's not happened. I don't, much as I'm, wound up about the penalty call and all that type of stuff. I don't really think we deserve anything from tonight. I think we're probably quite lucky in some ways to be getting away with a point, but you know, I'm not I'm not going to be complaining about it, especially not after that penalty decision. It's is what it is. I mean, I don't know what happens with Thomas Frank. I really don't, because tonight was awful. It was awful, and I feel kind of uncomfortable saying that because we have drawn at a notoriously difficult ground and all that type of stuff. But I don't. If you get what I'm saying, I don't feel like we've created a 2-2 scoreline. It's been two speculative goals from Cristian Romero, from our centre back, to kind of, you know what, that unbelievable header and a bicycle kick, man. Like, that's not really sustainable, is it? And I think that's the point I'm sort of hovering towards. I don't know what it is that Frank is establishing here, um, let alone being able to comment on whether or not what it is that he's doing is sustainable, because he needs to actually build the thing first. And it just feels like it's completely stuttering. And there are injuries, and there is this and that, but it doesn't bode well. That, I mean, maybe there's more to this, maybe there's more that will come out and stuff. But why has he dropped Mickey Van der Ven? Why is Mickey Van der Ven on the bench? Have they had a falling out? I was sort of talking about on Twitter earlier. When the Spence Van der Ven thing happened, shrugging Frank off after, I can't remember which game it was, Man United maybe, when they sort of gave him the cold shoulder. And we all sort of said, well, it's heat at the moment, isn't it? It's just passion from the players. They're only human. It's just, it's how they're going to react in this sort of situation. But I think in some ways, you know, probably didn't really consider quite how bad that was, and quite how bad an indication that was of the feelings towards him. The lack of respect for him from such an early point, to do that type of thing so publicly to him, is really quite alarming. Now, if Mickey Van der Ven has been left out tonight because of a culmination of that type of thing, that will be cause for concern as well. We're talking about one of the best centre backs operating in the Premier League, at least right now. Definitely one of Tottenham's best players. You want to see him playing games, right? It might just be that he's tired. It might just be that they're worried about his hammies or something like that. This can all just be speculation on my part. But he didn't he didn't cut beg your pardon. He didn't cut a particularly impressed figure on the sidelines, did he? Watching that all unfold. Neither did Xavi Simons. a player again who inexplicably seems to. I mean, maybe is there a Dutch Danish thing? I thought the Dutch and the Danish got on quite well. Didn't they like? Didn't they ally against the Swedes back in the day? I mean, maybe, just maybe, people don't base all of their contemporary thinking on medieval medieval skirmishes. Do they? Maybe they don't. Of course they do. The Northern Europeans, they're all weird. They're all, they're all weirdos. They love all that shit. Teutonic Knights and all that type of weird, whatever stuff. Vikings, Odin's beard. Um, Butter Malone says we need to drop Bentancur permanently. Agreed. Mark Fulton says Vicario never gone the right way, let alone saved a penalty at Spurs. No, he's awful with penalties. Oprah Rules says only one green shoot in that match. Completely unsustainable. That was sackable. 2 shots on goal in 100 minutes. Awful. Zeros and One says think we were quite bad. Newcastle bottled that more than anything else. Yeah, I mean, do you know what the other thing is though? I feel like Newcastle aren't that good at all, and yet they look miles better than us. And it's kind of a team that's supposed to be sort of level pegging with us, isn't it? I don't know. Pip Walker says a point, a place that we usually get mauled at. Progress? Question mark. No, because as I say, Pip, I don't think we really earned that, did we? We just sort of lucked into it, stumbled into it, if you like. Casual FPL says the result up there is not to be sniffed at, but my word, it's quite an effort to get through these games. And the penalty was an awful, awful decision. Ollie Whitefoot says, could that Romero goal be Frank's Kane versus Villa Poch era moment? I highly doubt it, my friend, but you never know. Roy Potentious says, if we had a 12th man on the pitch to stand in all the empty space we kept passing to, we might be good. Yeah, John O'Blaine on Twitter, he drew this sort of crude little diagram of a stick man in the acres of space that were in the center of this system. I mean, it's a stark parallel to what we saw with Nuno, isn't it? That just those huge gaps in the center of the pitch is it's really quite alarming. Stel Morrison says, best thumbnail ever, Jack. Thank you. Currently in Cape Town and watch the game from my friend's palatial Scarface mansion. Lovely jubbly, mate. Enjoy that. Enjoy the braai, isn't it? That's what they have out there. It's not I mean, it is a barbecue, but they call it the braai, don't they? Bit of braai. Nice big. I hope you got a nice big glass of red wine on the go as well, mate. For anyone listening to this, the thumbnail that he's talking about is I've done a stupid thing of me like pulling my hair out, basically. Because YouTube and quirky and all that. 40 years old, mate. 40 years old. Pathetic. Phil Mayo says, I've never in my life until today seen a football manager yell at his own player to stop a counter attack. He has to go, did that happen? Tell me more, Phil. Tell me more. If you're still there, if you listen to this, I need more detail on that. 10M Scally says, utterly, utterly abysmal. Romero's genius will justify it all in Frank's eyes, but forget it. Good point, whatever way you slice it. Jonas Milner, simply ask yourself this. How much influence did Frank have over the outcome of that game? Let's face it, we drew in spite of another managerial shambles. Hero ball has saved us, not deliberate tactics. Bang on. End of stream. Jonas Milner has nailed it. But that is it. That's bang on, mate. Bang on. Overalls also says the ref is receiving a barrel of oil tomorrow morning. Feels that way a bit, doesn't it? Phil G, 1882, says, I cannot stress how much I'm fuming at that penalty. Mate, head is on mark. Like, it still is. When I think about it, winds me up so much. And it also got pointed out to me. Remember I think it's in the COVID game, wasn't it? The dire handball, air quotes for that penalty they got at White Hart Lane. I think that one was just disgusting. JKR Infinite says last good thing Levy did before leaving was convincing Romero to extend his contract. He must have spiked him beforehand. Then some then someone spiked Levy and he extended Bentancur's. Yeah, there's all sorts of chat, isn't there? Like, oh, we only gave Bentancur a new contract to keep Romero happy, all that type of thing. I mean, I don't know, but it's seeming like a very poor decision. It's the fact as well, when you look at the official announcement of it, they just say on a long-term deal. So, I mean, just can we have a bit of clarity? How long is that long-term deal, please? That'd be good to know. JKR Infinite also says Bergval is a hairband away from being a baller. So many flicks and passes that nearly came off. Yeah, that lovely flick for what would have been the opening goal of the game was agonizing. Because he does seem technically quite sound as a player, but he's also got a lot of he's got a lot of the dog in him, doesn't he? So yeah. Football documentaries. So should we be starting Romero up top against Brentford? Give it a go, mate. Let's give it a go. We demand glitter who says Gabriel does that every game for Arsenal. Does and that's the thing. That's the point I'm making. Like, forget Arsenal, forget Gabriel. You will see an example of that Bentancur Burn tussle in, I guarantee you, every single game of football you probably ever watch. Thus, there needs to be a penalty in every single game where that happens. I don't know, it's mad. Dadair is too risky, says game's gone. Ref's being paid off. You know, I'm not gonna delve into that because that's probably libelous. If the Premier League is monitoring me talking on here, I would suggest that they should probably have bigger fish to fry, better things to get on with. But equally, if they are, I don't want to say anything dodgy. Rob Stone says, "Don't worry, we'll be back to losing ways on Saturday." It's Brentford, isn't it? Where is it? Is it at home? Floaty says, "I thought we were pants today, relying on our centre backs to score again. Ref had a shocker, but I think the pen was for no, Floaty, mate. You know, we're not having any penalty revisionism here on this podcast. You know, you've seen The Departed. You know when Jack Nicholson's having basically that racist exchange with the Chinese triads that he's doing the deals with. He keeps pointing, saying, "In this country," that's me. On this podcast, there will be no penalty revisionism. Sam Walsh says football needs objective rules. Not looking at the ball and holding is objective. Bentancur is the idiot here. He knows he's supposed to. Look, I just said we're not. Look, I'm look. This is the one bit, right, in this pitiful lemming existence that we all live, right? We all have our own little like mound that we get to protect. Okay, right, and mine is my little bubble, this podcast where I talk and I say stuff, right? And I say whatever, and I don't need to be held accountable, right? I don't need to be held accountable for the fact that at the start of the season I said maybe Thomas Frank could be our Jurgen Klopp, right? That doesn't matter because I just get on here and I press a button and then I start going "Bleh," into a microphone, into a camera, whatever, right? And if I want to sort of sit here and say that wasn't a penalty and I'm really angry about it, right? Don't come here and start talking about objectivity and rules and eye lines and all that sort of thing, all right? Don't want to hear it. I don't want to be confronted here. That's what out there is about. Out there in the world. Oh, could we revise that? Oh, could we touch base on that a bit later on? Oh, I had some thoughts on that thing. You know? That's what life is, isn't it? Other people having thoughts and stuff. Sometimes I just want to, you know, out my mouth. Penalty, blah 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 blah. Yeah, don't think that's not that unfair, is it? Um, Capote says 2 shots on target, 2 goals. Not good. We didn't have anything until the subs came on, and the game plan went out the window. James Regal Comedy. Hello, mate. Says ending of the game aside, how does Brennan Johnson sleep at night playing like that and picking up his wages? You'd think being dropped from the team for a week would spark him into trying a bit harder. Yeah, it is a bit funny, isn't it? He, you know, he's sort of got a bit of legendary status at Spurs, doesn't he? Let's be honest. Um, but but I do think every single time I watch him play, he's just championship level. You know, I don't know. It's kind of how I feel about it. You know. But look, he gave us that night in Bilbao. He gave us that wonderful memory. So whatever. Hacker CPS says worst players today were Bentancur, Kudus, and Porro in that order. So people always used to say on their Twitter bios, isn't it? Misses, kids, dogs, Man United, in no particular order. But then if they felt like being sort of cheeky about it, it would be like dogs, Man United, kids, misses, in that order. You'd be like, all right, funny man. I see what you've done there. Hacker CPS also says we need a Wharton, a Yates, something. Demetrius says none of our players are good enough to be a challenging team. Maybe Van der Ven, maybe Romero. I'd say they are. Kudus is a very talented player. I think you drop Kudus in at Arsenal, he is ridiculous. Nick Shipley says if we could get 40 mil for Porro, I'd take it. Yeah. Wes Johnson says, do we hate Frank's football as much as Romero hates Brazilians? I mean, he sort of gets on quite well. He gets on quite well with Richarlison nowadays, doesn't he, mate? So I think we probably hate Frank's football more, I reckon. Deuce, here we go. Here we go. This is it. This is prime Rule the Roost content. Deuce is wild. Long time commenter on these streams. Says it has to be Poch back in the summer. A man who has earned the benefit of the doubt. Let's buy a load of new furniture while we're at it. I'm there. You know what? I'm there. I flip-flopped on this so much. And I did hit that point when I was like, after Ange's won that cup, it kind of feels like, maybe that was kind of Pochettino's destiny to come back and win a cup for Spurs. And since we've done that now, maybe that chapter's closed. But now I'm just like, just give him back. Just bring him back. Let him do his thing for Donald Trump. in the summer, and then come Spurs. Come back to Spurs, Dad. Let's give it one more go. Let's give it one more go. And I do think I'm just going to preempt there, but he didn't do very well at Chelsea. He did. I think he did do quite well at Chelsea, and a fair few more of the more objective Chelsea fans generally say he did actually start to sort of turn the tide at Chelsea a bit. Um, he didn't do very well at PSG. Who did do really well with that PSG team? It was toxic. It was falling to pieces. Nobody could really get a tune out of it. Luis Enrique came in and ripped it all up, didn't he? So, you know, USA, he's starting to turn them around now. Just smashed Uruguay, didn't they? So maybe they'll win the World Cup. Imagine that. USA win the World Cup and we get Pochettino back as manager. Happy days. Vamonos. Um, Pip Walker says, the little thought about hoping that we get spanked to speed up the sacking process crossed my mind. Naughty, naughty, you said the quiet bit out loud. Capote says, Van de Ven, you shouldn't drop your best defender and only informed player when you're desperate for a result. It's bizarre. I really would be interested to hear more about that. I wonder if they've just had a falling out, or if it is something more routine, like he's just not fit. He's felt a little tweak in training or something. I don't know. Ricochet Pig also says, surely the constant shuffling of the lineup and shape doesn't help. Wouldn't it be better to develop some team understanding first, then integrate other players and tactics gradually? Yeah, probably, mate. Are we going to do that? Don't know. Zorba the Greek says, I'm just going to go numb and see how things are for Frank after Christmas. Yeah, maybe. Thomas Thomas Jones says Newcastle with Isak win that by 3. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? That Walter Mardi, he sort of came into the Prem with a bang. And that was a decidedly less convincing performance from him today, I thought. It's a sort of, dare I say it, performance from a player that Spurs would actually sign. He is very talented. I'm not trying to dig him out. Well, I sort of am a bit, aren't I? But I'm not trying to be like overly like down on him. I just didn't think he was that good today at all, against us. Brian Park says, would love to see Xavi and Tell get a run out from now on. Yeah, I'm with you on that, mate. I want to see Xavi play more. It It's perplexing. It gets ever more perplexing with every single result that passes at Spurs. Every single result, every single poor performance that we see, it's hard to understand how Xavi isn't getting into the side, isn't it? Tell sort of disappeared, really, hasn't he? Disappeared from proceedings. It's hard to sort of reconcile that a player that we spent a decent wedge of money on, we're all very excited about when we signed him from Bayern Munich last year on loan. Is now just, again, just one of these players that's just kind of faded into the background at Spurs. Again, what does that say about our recruitment, the strategy behind that recruitment? Again, feels like another opportunistic deal, doesn't it? Just feels like an opportunity's presented itself because Bayern want to pay us a bit less for Harry Kane. We need a player with a similar sort of profile, so we're like, yeah, go on in. Let's give Tell a go. Don't know, it's a bit weird, isn't it? Michael Harrigens says we are so terrible and predictable. Yeah. Jack Underhill says head is still on Mars from that penalty call. Yes. Yes. I Love Lily White says, feel like we got that result in spite of Frank tonight. Maybe a bit harsh, but still, the lineup was terrible. Yep. Anon Nomad says, really feeling like 15th is attainable this season. Dare dream do. Dare dream do. Oh, here we go. So Phil Mayo has given me some clarity. So Phil Mayo said earlier on that this is the first time he's ever seen a manager have a go at one of his players for breaking. And I asked him for a bit more clarity on that. And so he said, about 10 minutes in, Kudus breaks away and beats Hall, has Bentancur ahead of him, and Frank yells at him to pull it back. Kudus pulls it back, and it goes all the way back to Vicario. Yeah. I mean, that's be good. I'm sure there will be a video of that doing the rounds at some point, so I'll keep an eye out for that. But yeah, it's pretty miserable. Alex Paramore says Bruno is a show pony. Loved watching Romero copy his celebrations and set him off. Ooh, let's hide behind my mate Joe Linton. Yeah, it is a bit. MT Emirates says, if we can't bin VAR, can we at least bin sending the ref to the monitor? I've literally never seen the call changed after they watch the video. So what's the point? Just slows thing down. Yeah, I know what you're saying. So it's like if they're sending the ref to the monitor, then the ref is generally going to say, yeah, cool. So the geezers in the whatever it is, Stockley Park have said this is a penalty. So that's that. Yeah. Tequila Shark, New Jersey says, give Poch the keys and the budget. Let's do it. Let's do it. Pirate Dread Roberts says, how is it we sat Levy, won a cup, and have this much apathy 6 months on? Yeah. Yeah. Mark Lobley says, Jack, some of my worst days were prime Conte, but as a new dad at the time, it softened it for me. How is your Spurs life balance? Does it feel hazy? Yeah, that's a good question, mate. It's quite interesting, isn't it? I think in the moment I still get frustrated, as I think we all do as football fans. But then, like after the Arsenal game, and sorry, this is lame simp new dad stuff. I'm sorry to anybody that wants me to be going on here about, I don't know, greetings cards and stuff. But we got walloped by Arsenal and I was in such a rage about it. And then you just sort of like, you know, you're looking at your little baby there smiling at you and not doing gas smiling, actual smiling, and you're just like, I don't really care. I don't really care about the football that much, actually. This is quite nice. So yeah, I think it does. It definitely does sort of sand the edges off of it. But if I were to say that I didn't want to spit at my TV and throw a glass at it when that penalty decision got given, I'd be a liar. So you know. Phil Mayer also says that Warnock called out the coolest thing on the Peacock broadcast. Yeah, I don't know. It's bizarre, isn't it? Shall I do the player? Yeah, I guess I'll do the players. I don't really have an awful lot to say about the players, like individually again, because it sort of feels like there's more of like an issue with the system and the way we play and the way we approach games. But I will do them. And that does also mean there's going to be another advert break coming up here. And for people that like to moan about adverts in their free podcasts, if you don't want it to be a free podcast, you can join the Patreon, patreon.com/RTRpod. If you join a supporter tier, you get every single episode of the podcast completely ad free. So yeah, do that. Here's some adverts. Back with you. So Giuliano Vicario Number of good reflex saves tonight, I thought. Solid enough. Fine. Pedro Porro, mixed bag. A few decent deliveries. Pretty sure he delivered the ball for Cristian Romero's opener. So I think he did anyway. So I have to give him something for that. But yeah, whatever. Cristian Romero obviously stepped up when the team needed him to. Has scored 2 worldies. Shows his quality, doesn't he? At certain sort of clutch moments, I guess. Not only did he score the 2 goals, he also like put in a number of like really remarkable sort of recovering tackles and things, I thought, throughout the game. So yeah, good performance from him today. Probably our best player today, wasn't he? Regardless of the 2 goals. Big Kevin Danso actually was all right today, I thought. I've sort of remarked before that I'm not as convinced by him when we actually start games with him, but he was decent, I thought. So, Destiny Doggy. I don't really have an awful lot to say about him tonight, if I'm honest with you. It seemed like one of those performances where he was just kind of there. I don't really feel like there's anything that I focused on that was overly positive or overly negative about him. Just kind of there. Papsar, a player I very much admire. Didn't think it was a vintage performance from him tonight, to say the least. Yeah, not particularly good at all. Um, I think he had just a couple of little moments where he was driving forwards with the ball, looks to sort of try and pick a pass, thread a ball through, didn't really work out for him. And then he just kind of disappeared off into the shadows a bit for the majority of this game. So, yeah, quite a bit disappointing, really. Rodrigo Bentancur, I've spoken about him. I'd happily, honestly, I'd happily never see him play for Spurs again. Lucas Bergvall, good. He's a good player. We need his energy. We need his ability, but also we just really need his energy. We need somebody that's going to grab a game by the scruff of the neck like he does, I feel. Mohamed Kudus, ever a threat without ever really threatening. Hey, hey, how's that for a play on words? But it's kind of how I felt about him tonight. Um, I'm happier when he's in the team, so it's kind of how I feel about it. Brennan Johnson, was he even playing? Randa Kalamwani, a quiet night from him tonight, actually, really. But what service did he get? None whatsoever. So, you know. Uh, who came on? Xavi Simmons, was he on long enough to really make it sort of call? I don't know. Not really. Richarlison, doing Richarlison. None of these, to be honest, none of these subs, like, I've got an awful lot to say about any of them. Guess I just would sort of say back to the point we're making at the top that this is not was by no means a vintage performance. Sometimes you just need to get a result somewhere, right? And Newcastle has been a miserable place for us for a few years. The fact that I do feel like we could have actually snatched it right at the end. I do feel like we could have done that, but we didn't. We've gotten a draw up there. We've not been slapped about, so we'll take that. Obviously, we'll take that. But again, not really a result that Spurs have earned or Thomas Frank has earned through his approach to the game. It's two just inspired moments from the club captain, isn't it? Who has, like I say, proven to be a clutch player when it matters. Clutch player. What happened to that expression? That was so en vogue, wasn't it? A couple of years ago, people would always talk about clutch players, recycling possession, double pivot. There's some of these expressions that sort of became real common parlance all at once. Like, and I want to say it's probably a little bit further. I reckon it's probably closer towards like 2020, that sort of time. Too much time sat inside, wasn't it? That's what it was. Too much time sat inside, looking at phones and computers. How was that 6 years ago now? Do you see that the other day? That I'm not sure who it was, World Health Organization or something like that. But it said it was like an on this day, a cheery on this day. On this day 6 years ago, the first patient zero of coronavirus was discovered. And I was thinking, 6 years ago. That is all melded into one. And you know what, I genuinely partly feel that's because Spurs have been so woeful. You know, they say time flies when you're having fun. Well, time also flies when your football team is completely and utterly abject. But if this time flying is bookmarked between two glorious periods of Maurizio Pochettino in charge of this football club, then I'll take it. I'll take that all day long. Um, yeah, I really feel like that would make me quite happy if he came back as gaffer. Got to say, I've got to say, because I don't like. I know people are going to say like, don't go back to your ex and all that type of thing, but I feel like there's not anything there to spoil as such because there's so much unfinished business. I feel like if in his first tenure we'd have done something like won the Europa League, right? If we'd had those scenes like we had with Ange, even if we'd won an FA Cup, I feel like everyone would feel like that chapter is closed. But the fact we got so close to basically everything under Pochettino and got nothing means there is enough unfinished business there that it would just be nice to let's just pick the scab. Let's pick the scab. Let's get the wound back open. Let's feel vulnerable again. Let's have Maurizio back in summer. Go on. Let's do it, please. Please. Roy Portier says, just remember the final 2 years of Poch was absolute dirge. The football was awful. Still got to a Champions League final, you know. Let's have it. I don't know. Brentford on the weekend. That'll be interesting, won't it? Imagine if they smash us. It's not that hard to envisage, is it anymore? Anyway, save myself blithering on anymore. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. You know the drill. Ratings, reviews, drop likes, all that type of thing. Come on, you Spurs, up the Spurs. Much appreciate, much love, all that sort of stuff. Bye bye.